When a flower doesn't blossom, do you really blame the flower, or do you look at the soil, the water, and the sun? And the reality is that you look at its environment. Of course, the soil, the plant might not be, the flower might not be healthy, but the environment plays a big, big role. And if you want our businesses to blossom, we've got to make sure that the ecosystem they are in it also blossoms, and we play our role in that. And that's very important for us.
Today's episode, we sit down with Ebru Kaya, an inspiring woman who is a co-founder of the Regenerative Investing Institute and CEO at Atreyu Investments. She shares her unique approach to the theory and practice of investing in businesses by finding their true essence and considering the emotional and relational aspects of their work.
This episode to me really felt like a soulful introduction to regenerative impact investing with lots of great storytelling and really showing the importance of the shift that we talk about so much in the regenerative finance space, going from narrowly defined problems, competitive, dominant, extractive aspects to more holistic, inclusive models that always make sure to also consider the heartbeat. Let's dive in. Hello, Ebru. Welcome to the ReFi Podcast.
Hello, Teresa. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Hi, Ebru. We're so honored to have you on our show. Ebru Kaya is co-founder and CEO of Atreyu Investments and co-founder at Regenerative Investing Institute. And she's doing incredible work on developing a theory and practice of regenerative investing. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and let's kick it off with your personal journey, Ebru. Can you start us off by sharing what led you into impact investing in the first place? What inspired you to focus on this field?
There's a longer version and the shorter version. I think I'm going to go with the shorter version. The shorter version is that I've always been interested in giving back and doing good in life. And as long as I remember, really, impact was my thing, contributing to life. My background is economics and finance, and I've studied in Turkey, and then I've got a scholarship and went to UK, and it was all great. But when I came back, I thought about what I wanted to do, and there was one clear answer, is that's to use my skills and what I had and use them to do good. And as I said, to contribute to life in some form or shape. And my very young mind, I thought the best way to do it was to work for an NGO. So I started applying for NGOs. And I had my favorite continent in mind, which was Africa. I had this incredible pull to, by the way, currently I'm dialing in from Africa, South Africa. I had this incredible pull to come to this continent, and just knowing its energy and its people, there's something really magical about here, and call it intuition, calling sensing, it was pulling me. So I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I started applying for NGOs. The only important thing is that they took quite a long time and to come back to me. And throughout that time, Unilever kept knocking on my door. Third knock, I was like, okay, I'll come check it out. And that was the beginning of a very long journey for me in the business world and the corporate world. But the good news was that I very quickly discovered how much we can do with business and the power of business. And if we can really direct business to do good, there's so much can be achieved. And that was very exciting for me. And the other bonus point was Unilever took me to UK and then took me to Africa. So I ended up being in Africa and in an unimaginable way, but in a wonderful way. And I started working for this incredible company who was really driving the sustainability agenda globally and in Africa. So my story is really 20 plus years in the corporate world and the business world, and continuously trying to use my skills and my experience to create something meaningful and also influence business to do good throughout my roles. I think and I have been very lucky. I had a very versatile career. I have worked across finance, marketing, strategy. I really didn't get the chance to get bored. And sustainability, obviously, being impact-driven, became my passion. And from there, it very quickly evolved into setting up a food fund in Africa. It was the last 2 years of my corporate career, if I could put it that way. And really the thinking was that if we could really, I was very conscious of the challenges that we faced in the food system in Africa. If you live here, I know globally we talk about the food system being broken, but in Africa, I think it's broken at another level. And if you live here day in and day out, you kind of have this giant pull to do something about it. And I came up with this idea called the Hatchery. It was a food fund. And that was really my first step into the impact investing. And once I've concluded that journey, I started, or in parallel rather, I set up a separate impact investment vehicle with my husband and my business partner. And since then, we've been on that journey. I thought this was going to be a short version. Sorry, maybe it ended up being a long version. But so where we are is that currently we run a small investment vehicle called Atreyu. And maybe the piece that is most interesting for you is that as much as our journey and my journey in business has been around impact and impact, and then eventually mold into impact investing, what we really try to achieve with Atreyu is something slightly different, and hopefully one step above is around regenerative investing and bring in an additionality or another level of higher level thinking in the way we invest and in the way we do business. And that's why I also co-founded the Regenerative Investing Institute 3 years ago with a colleague of mine that I met through the Capital Institute.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think many of our listeners are going to relate to your story, especially kind of when it comes to looking for an alternative to the traditional nonprofit invest space to make impact. So I'm looking forward to discussing that more. But before we get to that, Ebru, can you tell us a little bit more about your projects? How did you form the Regenerative Investing Institute and Atreyu Investments specifically? And how do you maybe balance your time between those two?
It's difficult. So I think my journey started when I left the corporate world. I was very clear that I was tired of pushing uphill. There's a system that is out there and it's difficult. It's really difficult to influence the financial system and the economic system that we are all embedded in from inside. And after 23 years, I've come to this conclusion. I said, okay, I have really tried one way of changing the system. And I want to actually now step out and try maybe build a new system that actually makes sense in my own way. And I didn't obviously have all the answers, but my starting point was I knew what did not work in the traditional impact investing. I knew what did not work in the impact businesses, and I wanted to address those. And the two real headlines were interconnections. When they were in impact businesses or impact investment, often interconnections are not considered. And if you think about the world we live in and go back to the basics, how we are all really living systems, we are incredibly connected. And if you don't take these into consideration, often when you try to do good, we actually create damage. And its unintended consequences become too big. And for me, I wanted to address that. And the second piece for me was around the potential. I did say at the beginning that I've always been driven by doing good and I wanted to contribute to life. But there's a drawback in that in terms of doing good. Sometimes it seems that you have all the answers and you go and try to impose your thinking into a context that you're not familiar with. And I was guilty of this. I thought I had the answers and I could just make the world a better place because I knew it all. And I did it, obviously. And so now with what I wanted to do with the concept of potential is actually bring to life how to really tune into the context, the places, the communities, the environments that we set up businesses in, and how do we bring them to life without assuming we have the answers. It's quite a different approach. So yeah, and with Atreyu, for me, the two main headlines was to address these big things and how to adapt a different approach to investing. And I really didn't have many places to go. My starting point was nature, because I knew nature was all about interconnections. And I said, okay, I'm going to go and try learn from nature. That led to biomimicry. That led to Regeneration. I've come across Capital Institute, John Fullerton's course, which was really my first step into the world of regeneration. And I'm very grateful to him for the work that he's doing and how he's leading this space. And then my journey followed on with various other courses. But I kept this question in my mind, how can I turn Atreyu into a truly regenerative investor? And that is beyond investing into regenerative businesses. So we can invest in regenerative businesses, but how we invest matters. And I started looking for answers for that, and I couldn't find answers. There is one great paper written by Ben Haggard and Sidney Cummell and about regenerative investing, which I thought was really impressive. And I started working with Regeneration at the time doing the TRP course, and also reached out to a colleague of mine that I met through Capital Institute and put the question out there. How can I, my starting point, small starting point, how can I turn Atreyu into a truly regenerative investor? And if I can do that well, then I think that is already, for me, a good enough impact, because hopefully it will shine for itself and with its own integrity. But I didn't have the answers, as I said, and I had to kind of just pull up the sleeves and get to work with Tunisia, with my co-founder at Regenerative Investing Institute, and starting putting a theory and framework together around regenerative investing. And the idea was always do the work, do the practice in Atreyu, learn, carry to theory, progress to theory, and put them back into practice. And not only Atreyu, obviously, actually, Atreyu is a starting point, the wider investing ecosystem. And so those are how they were born.
Perfect. And can you maybe actually explain the difference between impact and regenerative investing?
Yes. I think impact investing starts with absolutely, and I think life is an evolution. And we evolve. And we just need to, it's a baby step. We keep moving on the journey. And it's like you can't run before you crawl, right, as a child. And it's the same thing. I think impact investing is a great industry and initiative that really started with wanting to do good. But I think, as I said, from what I could see is that there had been a number of areas that we could potentially improve. And those areas, most importantly, is around interconnections and understanding the connections that happens in an ecosystem and bring that to the way we invest. And the secondly is understanding the energy and the life capacity almost that comes with the contexts and the places that we invest in. And it is so important to understand the essences of those places before we go and introduce anything new, because there's already a culture, an energy, and a way of being there, and an inherent potential. And when we assume what we know, the answers, and we copy and paste, we often destroy the good there. And of course, there are many occasions that impact investment has created good outcomes as well, and absolutely fine. I think with the regenerative investing, what we're saying is that let's go a step deeper and let's go and look, at least this is what we have come up with the Regenerative Investing Institute. We have defined a regenerative investing framework, and we talk about 3 pillars in this framework. And the first pillar is potential, which I mentioned is really about going into the places that we invest in, understanding, number one, the essence of the investee company, the entrepreneur that drives that business. And what is it trying to come out of that business as a potential? But then also understanding what is the context, the ecosystem is investing in, and what is that context calling? Because if there's now not really matched and marrying, you can have some good outcomes, but to reach the full potential, it's important to understand those 2, the essence of the place and the essence of the business and the entrepreneur that drives it, and see how we can support it. So that's one angle of regenerative investing for us. The second piece, we call it the citizenship, and citizenship is really all about the relationships. I tell this analogy sometimes, and when a plant doesn't blossom, when a flower doesn't blossom, do you really blame the flower, or do you look at the soil, the water, and the sun? And the reality is that you look at its environment. Of course, the soil, the plant might not be, the flower might not be healthy, but the environment plays a big role. And if you want our businesses to blossom, we've got to make sure that the ecosystem they are in it also blossoms, and we play our role in that. And that's very important for us. So it's a big consideration. The third pillar is what we call it the capabilities. And the capabilities really talk, and it's the essence of, I think, regeneration, as it talks to the the whole process of regeneration starting with the individual and with the inner work. And it's really us being able to not only, I'm going to use two analogies here, not only our left hemispheres, which is our analytical, very, and sometimes reductionist, very methodical and removed from context way of looking at the world, and marry that, bring in our right hemisphere and making sure that we actually see the context that we operate in. And, or another way, and this is the way that Ian McGilchrist actually talks about, he's got this book about divided brain. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, but I'm a big fan. And I love the way that he talks about how our left hemisphere and right hemisphere see the world differently. And in a way, a big part of the problems that we currently face is that we're very much left hemisphere driven and put the left hemisphere on the pedestal, made it the king, and really undermined the right hemisphere. And we lost touch with context. And we lost touch with more the feminine side, sometimes what we call it. Another way of looking at it is actually, as Fritjof Capra, he talks about the living systems, and the smallest living system being a cell has got two tendencies. And if you look at a cell, has got a porous boundary. And the boundary is there, it's very important because the boundary is there to protect the cell. Okay? But the boundary is porous, and that means the cell can always interchange and nutrition and information with its ecosystem. Okay? This is the most basic of living systems. So there are two tendencies in every living system: a self-assertive one, the one that tries to protect, and then there's an integrative one, the one that exchanges with the ecosystem. Okay? What we have been doing traditionally, or since the Industrial Revolution, maybe, talk about it, is that we've been single-mindedly going on the self-assertive tendencies. It's all about the masculine, it's all about the self-assertive, it's all about the competition, the dominance, and etc., by the way, which is very common in our business world. And we've forgotten about the more holistic and the more collaborative approaches. And the idea around regeneration is actually to bringing this into life, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the positive. Not one is not right, one is not wrong. They work together and they complement each other. And if we can bring this back to our lives, and we can do the analytics, but always see the context, I think we'll be in a good place. And that's very much in line with, as I said, how the living systems operate. And this was a very long information about our framework, but it's in essence, that is what it is. It's really tapping into these three pillars and trying to bring these light in the way that we manage ourselves and we operate as the investor, and also bringing these to life in the way that we can't dictate it to our businesses, but we can influence them and create the conditions for them to live it and adapt similar disciplines and similar principles.
Thank you for that. And I must say that's probably one of the most beautiful definitions of regeneration that I've heard. Really appreciate that. I do want to make sure that we have set a strong foundation for this conversation. So I do want to take a little step back. Ebru, can you maybe tell us how would you explain impact investing to a child? And how would you also explain maybe the number one thing that is wrong with it?
Impact investing is investing with a do-good mentality, but often in a very narrowly defined scope. Not sure if a child will understand that. Thinking about it, and maybe it will help to give an example. Think about the current moment that happens with alternative protein is becoming a big thing in our world, right? It's massive. And it's very much driven by being environmentally friendly and really reducing the pressure on the environment. As we know, the meat industry is a big culprit when it comes to the environmental challenges. It's certainly a big contributor. And therefore, alternative protein industry is trying to address it. So the intention is good. But if you look at a lot of the alternative protein products that are out there, they're highly processed. And if you look at one of the biggest health challenges that we face around the world, a lot of the chronic illnesses are driven by highly processed foods. We're trying to fix something with the environment, we're damaging something else, with the health. So we need to look at it holistically. And that's a very big piece. And I think the starting point is maybe, and I think that's the biggest perhaps difference between the regenerative investing and the impact investing. Regenerative investing works with the potential. Impact investing looks to solve problems. There are different approaches. One, you go with very open mind and look to realize the potential inherent in a place, inherent in a team, inherent in a business, inherent in an ecosystem. And the other one goes, I'm going to go and solve this problem. But the reality is the world is very complex and there's only so many implications and connections we can think of. And therefore, the chances are, if we're not really applying our minds to them, we actually mess up somewhere. So narrowly defined problem solving I think for me is probably the biggest issue.
I love that. This is so helpful. Thank you, Ebru, for walking us through the example. Really useful to visualize it in our heads. And thanks for also touching on your framework that you created for regenerative investing in your paper and kind of going deeper into the role of business now. You already mentioned, right, as your motivation was to be involved in business as a source for good. And you define business in a unique way in your paper. Can you walk us through your concept of business as a living system itself? How can business be a living system?
Ooh, so let me maybe...
Why business in the first place?
Because the business is a way of us contributing to life. And I think the business is a way of, as humans, being in this world. And it can be a beautiful thing. We call it business, we gave it a name, but it is that we are all contributing, living in a community, right? And we can't, as an individual, as Ebru, I can't do everything by myself. And therefore, Maya does something, Teresa does something, or together we come together, we create something. And generally, it's not 1 + 1 + 3, it's generally 1 + 1 +, I don't know, because 3 of us coming together creates some extra magic. So the business is there to really serve life and this originality. And if you go back many years, you hear the story. I mean, when you work for Unilever, you have to know the story. But you hear the story about how Unilever was founded, the Lever brothers. When they came up with the original soap, the desire was actually, there was a huge number of deaths that was happening, driven by cholera and not being able to just exposing to germs, people being exposed to germs with dirty water and etc. And the soap was invented to actually, as almost a health product, to really address a need of the society. It wasn't there to, in its current form, 100 million needs that we have invented in terms of smelling good and, I don't know, feeling lovely and feeling happy and all of those marketing agenda that comes with it. But the primary starting point with soap was actually really addressing a need. And that need was people were dying from very simple diseases, communicable diseases, and germs that come with lots of cholera and etc. So business is there to serve it all. But I think what has happened, we kind of lost track. And the greed got in the way. And then when the greed gets in the way, it's very easy to get lost. And when you lose perspective, and that right and left hemisphere I was talking about, when we make the left hemisphere the king, and we forget the context. When everything becomes about the self-assertiveness, and we forget that we have a boundary and we need the ecosystem to flourish, then we struggle. And that's why business. And maybe another part of it is Maya, and I know you know this story, but I think you haven't had the chance to meet with my daughter. But my daughter has been one of my biggest inspirations of this journey. And when Tanuja and I were working on what is regenerative investing, what is regenerative business, there was a big one question that came up with us and really touched our hearts. And it was inspired by my daughter, is that if my daughter was to start a business, how would I feel? How would I feel about it? What would I like the business to look like? And as an investor, if I invested into a business, how would I support her? It's a very different way of looking at a business through the spreadsheet and saying, these are the numbers. Okay, I'm going to give you guys, I don't know, X million euros, and I want to see you performing. Very different. There's a human, because it's so close to you and you're able to see the heartbeat, you're able to see the potential, you're able to support that individual in a very different way. And can we bring that into business? Can we bring that in the way that we invest? Imagine how much more potential would we be able to create if we were to just see the businesses that we invest in and the ecosystems that we operate in, not only data, not only numbers, not only pictures, but real human beings and real living things and with a heartbeat.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Based on that, how do you choose which companies or projects you invest in? And can you share a little bit about maybe your investment portfolio strategy?
So our portfolio strategy, let me start. So there are two levers. I called it different names, left and the right hemisphere, and the masculine and the feminine, the self-assertive and the integrative. We pretty much do the same. Yes, we do look at the numbers. We look at the business. Is there a business? And is it able to self-sustain? So there's a part of it that we do the conventional looking at the business, understanding what that business is about. Okay. But there's another big piece that we do, and that is really understanding the essence of that business. And that is through interactions with the founder and the founding team and understanding really what drives them. That's one of the most important things for us. What drives them, the values, what are they trying to achieve, and why do they wake up every morning and go to their business? Often we hear them, we have the most amazing entrepreneurs and their stories are incredibly powerful and they are really driven and they're pulled by something. And then that something is the piece that also is very important for us. What is it that they're responding to in their context? Wherever we're investing, it's very important for us to understand what is that ecosystem, what is that context needing and asking from that business. Because if that need is not there, if that pull is not there, we might have the most driven entrepreneur, but they're not meeting. And so it's very important that the business that we invest in a way, self-actualizes. But while they self-actualize, the system self-actualizes because it's responding to the system. So that's call it the art, really. It really is engagement and sensing and feeling and getting a sense of the place, but also getting a sense of the business. The second big piece, and I think that's a big differentiation to the impact investing. Impact investing often looks at what the business does, okay? What the business does. I'm going the alternative protein investment, right? I'm building an alternative protein industry, which is great because I'm addressing a problem at the environmental problems. How I do it often is the piece that is missing. And that's a big piece that we look at because you can have the most amazing idea and you can be solving a big problem in theory, but how you solve that problem matters because you might start with the best intentions, but you might create damage throughout the whole process. Think about Facebook. I think Facebook is one of the best examples I get here. And I don't know if you heard about that story, but Facebook is really, in the initial concept of Facebook is beautiful, right? Connecting people around the world. When it first came up, even my grandmother was happy. Like suddenly we were all reaching out to all our old friends. What a wonderful concept. But it had such a fraud business model. And the business model and how it did the business with jeopardizing the personal data and etc., how Facebook does business, it really takes away all the good that it achieves in a way, right? And so the business model and how a business does business is very important. And that's the other big piece that we look at. So what you do is great. We do invest into businesses and doing amazing stuff, but how they do matters a lot. Perhaps another part that I want to mention is this is how we select. In terms of industries, again, we really want to believe in this simple cycle or circle. We say a healthy planet. We can't have healthy people without a healthy planet. Okay? And we can't have a healthy planet without healthy people either. They're just codependent. They are together. And what facilitates them is really empowered communities. unless we have empowered communities, we're not going to have healthy planet, or we're not going to have healthy people. So these are the really three pillars that we invest in. And we're well-being of the planet, well-being of people, and well-being of all of communities. What it looks like, an example, one of my favorite examples is our latest investment. It's a school called Learn Life. Again, my daughter an inspiration. And this is actually the school that my daughter goes to. It is one of the most progressive schools that I have ever come across. And we have invested into education and learning. But Learn Life has got something magical. Learn Life doesn't talk about regeneration. They actually don't market themselves as a regenerative education business or anything like that. But they live regeneration. Remember the soil analogy, the flower analogy that I talked about? When you go into a Learn Life school, the number one principle is healthy relationships. And for me, that's like a healthy soil, a nutritious soil. The kids, number one priority of the school is to support the kids to have healthy relationships. Because when you have healthy relationships, you have healthy kids, mentally, emotionally. And then it's so easy when you have the nutritious soil, so easy to expose those children to a whole lot of different things so that they can become whatever they're meant to become. And the sun and the water is there in the analogy in terms of what is the potential that they could become. So then you want to be a cactus? Wonderful. You want to be a daisy? Wonderful. You want to be a rose? That's also wonderful. Everything goes and everything is supported. But the school is there to hold you with those relationships and to support you on your journey of you becoming who you're meant to become and that you're who you're pulled to become, rather than anyone imposing this is the way you should be. And when you walk into that school, you feel it. And there are no grades, there are no exams. There are different age groups and in the high school, let's call it, move from explorers to creators to change makers. And the way to move from one to the other is the rite of passage. It's not grades. It's the rite of passage that the kids define themselves. So Learn Life is our latest investment. And you can see, as I said, as you walk into that school, how those kids are blossoming. But you can also see the effects of that school around this community and how it's forming a different type of community around it. And the entrepreneur, the founder behind it, has got big dreams, as all our entrepreneurs do. He's got big dreams in terms of really bringing the community, really carrying these principles that they live in the school into the wider community and space in Catalonia, but as well as carrying these to the schools around the world and sharing these principles and let them be adapted into their own context. Not everything is going to work exactly as it is in Barcelona hub, but it will be different. Obviously, if you take it to Rwanda, which we're looking at as a project, very different needs, very different context, but there are certain principles that could go. And those principles are really very much living systems principles. So that's one example. Let me stop here, because if you don't stop me, I can tell you all the stories about our businesses. And to be honest, that's what I do, because I'm so excited about what they do. And our role is really to just support them.
Love that. When you said cactus and all that, I do want to be a pothos. That's my favorite plant. But we're really enjoying these stories. Can you maybe share one more success stories from your project that you've seen thrive?
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots, but I have two favorites. You guys help me. You choose food or health. Let me talk about feminine health. I'm a woman, so I get always very excited about health. This is another business that we have invested, I think last year or the year before. We continued, actually, we invested more this year. It's a female health business with a mission to close the gender gap. And it really is addressing, the starting point is a female hormone health. And the main issue this business has, or the founders has come across, is this business is based in Germany, by the way, but learnings could be taken all around. An average visit to a gynecologist in Germany is 7 minutes. This includes undressing, dressing, a full consult, the whole lot, 7 minutes. And generally, there's only one prescription, and that's a contraception pill. It could be a 20-year-old girl, or it could be my daughter going there with an acne problem. She'll probably get the same prescription. It could be me going there with premenopause. It could be the same. It could be another person going there with, endometriosis, the same. So the problem is that we haven't really applied our minds to the female health traditionally. And there's a big gap. And this is not only seen by us, it's seen around the world now. It's been acknowledged. And it's not from a malintent, and it's got it's got certain reasons why it's the way it is, but it's generally the medicine has been dominated by males. And there's been at times that they did not want to do trials on women, for example, medicinal trials on women, and drug trials on women, because women are childbearing and they didn't want to obviously damage or jeopardize the future generations. There were good reasons for it. But what resulted as an outcome is that a lot of the time when we go to the doctor and get a prescription, we overdose. It's because our bodies, I'm tiny. My husband is double my size, and we generally get the same prescription from the doctor. Surely, either he's underdosed or I'm overdosed, right? And that's because the medicine is not adapted, and we still have got a way to go. And a lot of the time, women are misdiagnosed when they have a heart attack, for example. 80% of the women heart attacks are misdiagnosed because the symptoms are different. So there is a lot that has to happen in the health sector. And FEMNA's starting point is hormonal health, and to be able to empower women in this space so that they can make their own decisions and they don't have to go with the one-size-fits-all contraception pill as the only solution. There's FEMNA has got a platform where you'll be able to do certain hormone tests at home and you get results, and then you're able to subscribe to certain coaching that helps you how to manage your hormonal health through exercise, through lifestyle changes, through certain food, healthy diets, etc., etc. But the idea is to walk the journey with the woman. And often, by being proactive, you don't need the contraception. And the beautiful thing FEMNA is also doing is, and they have been the leader in Germany in this space, they're now also working with the insurance companies and actually facilitating insurance companies to cover the costs associated with this type of proactive or regenerative health solutions as opposed to just conventional prescription, and which I find beautiful. And they're creating a lot of awareness around issues like endometriosis that has traditionally been totally underestimated and not seen or acknowledged by the healthcare system. And now there's awareness around it, and the insurance companies are saying, okay, we'll be able to cover the costs that are associated with this, helping you get better. So that's another amazing business. And when a woman is empowered, when a woman is healthy emotionally and mentally and physically, that community also thrives. Because I do think that we really hold those communities. And for us, that's very important. And we start this journey with FEMNA, which for us is always about understanding how do we learn from them and then carry the learnings to other parts of our portfolios and to other regions around the world.
Beautiful point about healthy, empowered women. I fully support that, Ebru. And can you tell us more about community engagement? So what steps do you take to engage with these local communities when you evaluate potential impact investments? And you mentioned that you really want to get the essence of a business. So how does that look like?
Look, I think for us currently it's quite limited because we work on quite a limited budget. And the idea is we try and reach and get a sense of those communities through the people that we talk and the businesses that we invest in. And so it's almost an indirect way of reaching the community, because also in a way, they are our arms and legs. We don't need to be necessarily talking to the customer every day to get a customer of a business every day to understand their engagement with a business that we invest in. The relationship that needs to be built is between the business and the customer. But what we do is to facilitate that. Perhaps a better way of answering it is that what we really want to do going forward is actually be able to bring some of these modules and understandings and learnings into the businesses that we invest in more intentionally. And what that means is that perhaps them going through a certain program with us, a capability building program in terms of understanding their own essence, understanding the essence of the community and the ecosystem and the environment they operate in, and being able to work with that to realize the potential. Of course, we're there to walk the journey with them, but they're the ones who are walking the street, and they're the ones who need to constantly sense how things are responding and happening. Because otherwise we have to be having a little hub next door to every investee company, and that's currently not possible. But the idea is to build the capability with them and alongside them so that we're actually able to tap into those communities better. One more thing on the community building. And this is an initiative that excites me a lot. And that is, with Atreyu, we've now finished our first raise of our fundraising has been completed, and we've actually deployed our funds. We've got 7 investors and 7 investee companies, which is beautiful. And we want to move on to the next phase. And when we, sit down and really took stock of where we have been, the journey we've been, it was very clear to us that we are committed to the journey 1000%. And if anything, we want to just walk the journey even more intentionally, even with more integrity to what we call regeneration or regenerative principles or living systems principles. And for that, we said we want to actually bring our investors and investees all into a space where they come and inspired by Learn Life, they can come and see what we mean, because part of our job is, I'm cutting again myself in a way, part of our job is also educating our investors, because we're all connected, right? Our investors need to know, what are we doing? How are we making an impact? And we want our investees also to engage with our investors and also with each other so that we can actually make sure that there's always a flow of information. But we also have been looking for the right opportunity to share some of the work that we have done and with the Regeneration Investing Institute, or some of the learnings we have been building in the last 3 years around regenerative investing in various investment processes. We want to bring these together in an event that we will do in Barcelona in end of October. The idea is to really bring our investors and our investees and some of our regen practitioners and really get them experience what we mean by regeneration. And I'm sure you've also come across this. It's a difficult concept to explain regeneration, and it's a difficult concept to understand because it's an experiential thing. And that's why it's so important for us where when these individuals come, and when I say individuals, these are all our partners come, we want them to walk the corridors of Learn Life and see what it means regeneration in the context of education and how those children come alive. And we want Maxi, our entrepreneur, that the female health business that I talked about, Maxi to share her story around what does regeneration mean in the context of health? How do our communities come alive through the woman, right? And another investee of our Pete, he will be sharing food and how do local food systems come alive in the context of regeneration. So the idea is to really create an experiential event where we get to see and really feel this thing. And then, because this is not enough, build on that with some great presentations and again, great facilitations and experiential themes, understanding what is a regenerative business, understanding what is regenerative capability and what is a living system and how do we connect to that and how do we see things differently. So anyway, so this is the beginning of the second phase of Atreyu, where the idea is, as I said, just create this hopefully magic. And from there, to be even more intentional, to keep continuing to bring our investors and investees on the journey with us, and hopefully inspire the other investors to continue. That's very important. If we can really do a good enough job, I will never claim that we're an expert, and we're learning, and I'm sure we're going to make lots of mistakes. But the idea is to share what we're learning and make it available to others. And hopefully, if we get some right, that we can inspire others to walk a similar journey.
And I like that you focus on the feeling rather than rationalizing, right? Again, left, right hemisphere. I see the theme here. Super interesting. And to the point that you mentioned that it's hard to define regeneration, right? It's also notoriously hard to measure. So how do you approach measuring the success of your investment, both in financial terms and social and environmental terms?
It's a journey. Financial terms is obviously, it's very easy to come up with a set of KPIs and say, okay, I'm touching this many number of women and delivering this much revenue growth or this much profit margin, this much cash, or I'm affecting the environment, I don't know, positively by reducing the carbon emissions this much. Yes, there's a role for them. Absolutely, there's a role for them. But the role is only half the job. The other half the job is what's happening in that context, and then how that community, how that environment, how that ecosystem is thriving. And there's a great example. You can have women on the board, right? It's been the biggest thing in the world now. We want women on the world. If the women on the world are acting as men and really coming in with the left brain and not bringing any of that right brain, have we really achieved the job? Not really, right? Yes, of course we must look at how many women on the board, but we must also look at what those women bring to the board. And that's the soft side that is difficult to measure. So the journey that we're on is twofold. One is to get a better sense of understanding, creating mechanism to understanding, sensing the improvement in the environment and the communities that we are in. And it's not easy, but we have a few ideas and it's work in progress. But maybe an easier example is, I'm not sure if you heard of this example, but I heard this a while back and I find it really powerful. If you look at the development of a village, let's assume that is struggling with poverty or corruption or all of those things, and I go and invest into creating jobs. The outcome to measure is not only the jobs, but the outcome to measure, if I'm really creating a fantastic contribution and catalyzing that ecosystem, is perhaps to look at how many girls are riding a bike to school. Yeah. Because this is such a clever KPI, and certainly I didn't invent this, such a clever KPI if you think about it. And how many girls, it's safe enough for the girls to cycle to school. It's a massive thing in Africa. It's safe enough for them to cycle to school. They have affordable enough that they can actually own a bike. Tummy is full that they have the energy to ride the bike. Access to menstruation products so that actually they can go to school, because often they can't because when they have their period. It ticks so many boxes. These are the type of KPIs that we are after that actually captures the heartbeat. And they are difficult to attach to a business and saying, you're going to just get this. If Capemne is all about female health and we give this really ambitious KPI to them, but it is important to look at that because it captures the bigger story, it captures the context, and it captures the heartbeat. And that's the journey that we're on. We don't have all the answers, but that's where we're trying to get to. And warm data is a great place that we are currently exploring and bringing in some of it and the learnings to our investee companies and also to our investing practice. Also exposing our investors because they're asking all the time, how are we measuring things? And we're going like, okay, these are the KPIs. These are the simple ones, but this is not enough. It's more than that. And it's a journey.
Love that. I'm wondering, how do you see technology and maybe specifically blockchain potentially making this process even more efficient and overall better?
Oh, good question. Well, look, I know there's a lot of people working in that space. And obviously, you're talking to that audience. I think blockchain, certainly by decentralizing everything, plays an incredible role. But I am cautious about technology. I think one thing we have often done in the past is that when we came up with technological advancement, we single-mindedly always looked at the positives and really just kind of ignored the negatives because we didn't want to see them or because it was too difficult. I'm not quite sure. I do have a theory, but let's just park it. But the idea is that we often focus on the positives and they were going to change our world. But we know better than that now. Nothing is going to be this single item, whatever target that's going to solve everything. So yes, I think blockchain is a great technology. And I think we need to look at what it brings us. But my plea to any technology is let's just be very mindful of the goods, but let's also consider the potential drawbacks and disadvantages that can come with it. And let's constantly keep watching. We can't obviously guess everything. It's impossible. That's the challenge, right? And let's use that, but let's observe what is happening so that we can actually take necessary precautions. If there's a damage, we can actually hold it and we can manage it or we can course correct. I think that's for me the primary thing with technology, like everything, I suppose, in the world. But I think technology, we often just get so excited and because it's very powerful, I suppose.
Totally. And I think that's a great final takeaway. Ebru, we do have 3 rapid fire questions that we would like to ask you. We always like to wrap up the episode with those.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess let's jump right in. First question, what book are you currently reading?
I am still I'm revisiting The Divided Brain. Ian McGilchrist is my hero. My husband is a bit jealous, but he's my intellectual hero. I love the work that he's done. So that's one book that I'm currently revisiting, let's put it that way.
Beautiful. And what excites you the most about your work?
Oh, working with entrepreneurs. I just love it. I'm not quite sure if it's a female thing, but I have this motherly sense that I get so proud of and then they are my age, some younger than me, but some older than me. But I really am very proud of the journey that they're walking because it's not an easy journey. And then what they strive to do is amazing. And I have huge respect for them. So when I have conversations with them and if I can contribute and support them in any form or shape, that's hugely, hugely fulfilling for me.
Beautiful. And finally, is there a quote, mantra, or concept that you feel like has really shaped your life?
There is actually, but I need to find that. Let me just quickly look for it because I don't know I can blurb it, but I won't do justice to it. So it's from Goethe and about commitment. Until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too.
Wow.
It's been a big one for me.
And on this note, we want to wrap up and encourage our listeners to stay committed to their values. And thank you so much, Ebru, for sharing just such vast knowledge and inspiring stories of success, as well as some wise words of caution. Really such an honor to have you on the show. We'll make sure to include all the links to ways to contact you so that our listeners can engage more with your work.
Wonderful. It was lovely to be here and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me. And good luck on your journey and with your future podcasts.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.